Almost a year ago, I was an opener at a resort, clocking in before 5 a.m. each day. The resort is located inside of an affluent neighborhood in a very wealthy suburb. Employees had to park in one of two parking lots at either ends of the property, and the lot I chose was adjacent to a long and windy road outside the resort, which led to the rest of the neighborhood. The road and resort were separated by a short range of brush and trees that no one ever walked through. I'd arrived one morning, per usual, and put the car into park with my headlights still on. The lights in the lot weren't ever on in the morning since no one else really showed up before 6 a.m. when the sun was out, so it was usually always dark at the start of my walk. I was one of the first employees to arrive on the property each morning and was usually completely alone in this particular parking lot at this time. This morning didn't seem any different. I had my hand literally at my keys, my brain in the process to turn off my car, when I noticed a young girl, maybe like 14 or 15 years old, come scampering through the span of trees that separates the resort from the outside road. Her body language was the exact definition. Run, with quick light steps, especially through fear or excitement. She was directly in front of my car, and my headlights illuminated a clear view of her in the pitch black. She looked like she was in high school, had long blonde hair, and was wearing a jacket with pajamas maybe, like she just walked out of a house. One thing about her that bothered me was that she wouldn't stop laughing and smiling. I couldn't hear her laughing from outside the car, but she was visually giggling at something I wasn't aware of or could see, and it was so unnatural. She occasionally glanced behind her as if someone else were there waiting, away from the headlights. She then waved at me, like it were a normal gesture this time, and then immediately ran to my passenger side door. This all happened in a matter of seconds, and I wasn't really sure what was even happening, besides my anxiety spiking. I know I simultaneously yanked the aux from my phone while grabbing for the lock button. I remember feeling panic for never remembering if it's up or down to lock when the girl began pulling violently and incessantly on the door handle on the passenger side. I realized because I didn't turn my car off, it stayed locked. She began pounding on the window, and I was screaming at the top of my lungs for her to leave before pressing on my horn. I could see her laughing outside like this were some type of game, as if I were a silly friend not letting her in as a joke. After a few seconds, she stopped the pounding and trying to open my car door. Her face fell flat, like I disappointed her, and she started to walk away from my car, back the way she came. She waved at me again before squeezing through the trees, out of the view of my headlights. This whole encounter confused me almost as much as it scared me. Most people I told the story to just chalked it up to her being on drugs, but that narrative hasn't felt right to me, despite her behavior. Maybe she was just being an extremely out-of-touch teenager whose parents need a firmer grip on her. My first thought was possibly human trafficking, but I'm not sure if that would fit the scenario, as I'm not the most well-versed with the subject. I told someone when I made it to LP, but they didn't seem to care much. I didn't call the police, and I regret that. I'll never get it out of my brain though, how off-putting it was, watching a stranger, seemingly alone, pop out from the trees in the darkness, laughing, and then try to violently enter your car in an empty parking lot. I do think the possibility of someone else being present the whole time is a lot more scary, and I wonder, who else was there, and where exactly? This story kind of creeped me out. It happened about 9 years ago, and sometimes comes to my mind. So I was on an adult dating site, one of the fetish types. I know, don't judge me. I just was looking for some fun. Anyway, I was stupid and gave out more information than I should have. I was chatting with a guy. He had asked me at some point what I did for work. At the time, I was working at a McDonald's, so I told him. He asked which one. I stupidly told him which one. We chatted off and on. We hadn't been chatting for too long. I also stupidly gave him my phone number at some point. He would talk about how he wanted to meet me on my break and have some fun on my break. I told him no thanks. I don't bring my lifestyle to my job. Anyway, so I checked my messages just before I was due to clock out of work. Luckily I did. He mentioned that he was at my job and told me what he ordered. I was like, okay. Well, don't expect me to do anything with you. I'm not interested. He then got upset and wasn't accepting that I wasn't interested. I was also scared because I had sent him a face picture of myself, but I had never received one from him. I really wasn't too interested in him, so I decided I didn't need a face picture since I likely wasn't going to meet up with him. His interests weren't what I was looking for, and I have a hard time straight up saying I'm not interested, and just slowly started to ghost whoever I had no interest in. Now, luckily I hadn't told him my work schedule, so he didn't know that I was about to clock out. So after clocking out, I told one of my managers that I was on a dating site and some guy just showed up to my work and I have no idea what he looks like, and that I was going to hang out in the back in that break room for a bit. Luckily she didn't judge me and just was like, "Oh, okay." So I waited about half an hour before I left. I didn't have a car at the time and had to walk home and was afraid he would see me and try to pick me up in his car. Luckily, no one followed me, so I was in the clear. I don't think he ever messaged me again, or I ended up blocking him or something. I don't know if this is all that creepy, but it creeps me out that some random person just decided that he would show up to my job and expect me to want to meet up with him. So yeah, now I just give a vague response as to where I work now. I don't work in the same town I live in, so it would be hard to pinpoint my exact location. This opened my eyes and made me more aware of the information I give out to strangers. I have been clean from all drugs since 2019. I am telling this story to remind people that everyone's intentions are not what they say they are. I am mentally traumatized from this experience, and I get reminders of it every day. I am grateful to be alive, and I have no idea what would have happened if I didn't get away when I did. This story is based in September of 2017, I believe. It was such a blur. I did whatever I could to survive in this harsh world. I was on the streets, no family, and in active crack, soon to be meth addiction. Backstory: I started using crack in 2015 and figured out that if I sold my body, I could make easy money. I know, not ideal, but I was deep in addiction, and at that point, I didn't care about anything. But in January of 2017, I met Ty, who also smoked crack, but worked every day, so I no longer had to do that. I was going on like 8 months free from selling my body and soul. Also, when I met Ty, he had a place in the big city, and he did a lot of work for people in this city. I was left on the street by the man I thought I had loved at the time. I must have said something wrong, because he flipped out and left with everything I owned in his truck. We just spent days getting high, and I was sure he was just throwing a fit, so I went over to my friend's house. Let's call him E. It was my home away from home, and I felt safe there. He was an older, maybe 60-year-old man who liked to get high, and over time, he became one of my best friends. I was able to take a shower and put on clean clothes. When I was all done, I remember sitting on the couch with disbelief that Ty would leave me like that. I started crying and wishing things had been different, while E held me and comforted me. I knew deep down that I needed a fresh start, to depend on myself and live a happy life. Across the street from E's house was a hometown bar where rappers and musicians would perform, and on that particular night, the bar had been filled with people from the bigger city. Let me explain. Where I come from, there isn't really a place for addicts to go and get clean. They do have a women's shelter, which I had been to before. About 30 minutes away is a bigger city where they have all the help you can ask for if you are willing to do the work. At this point, I was ready to get away from everyone and everything. I had no hope of cleaning up my life if I stayed anywhere close to where I was using. Remember, you have to remove old playmates, playthings, and playgrounds, so that's what I needed to do. I went right over to that bar and found a semi-good-looking guy heading back to the city I needed to go to. I told him I had planned to go to the shelter in the morning, and he told me I could just go with him and he will take me in the morning. On the ride, I remember feeling like a whole 100 bricks was lifted off my shoulders. I had nothing but the clothes on my back and an Obama phone with no minutes. I asked the guy I was with that was driving. I said, "You don't mess with this, right?" And I pulled out my crack pipe. He shook his head, so I rolled down the window and just let it go. I knew that going into the shelter, I had to get better. Not just for me, but I had kids and a family at that time. I wanted to start over. I just didn't know how hard it was going to be. Me and this random dude go to his friend's house. We smoke a blunt, and I don't remember nothing after that. I woke up on the floor of a clean room. I mean clean. There was nothing in it. It smelled like paint. As I looked around, I realized this was the place the dude was talking about moving into and renting. I got up, and he took me to get a coffee and right over to the shelter. I was terrified of what I was walking into. I had no idea what to expect. All I knew was I needed to better my life, and I needed to do it now. As we drove into downtown, I got a little nervous because I knew downtown was full of crime and drug dealers, big buildings and confusing signs. I then realized I was going to have to work really hard to get my life back. We pulled onto the street, and before I knew it, he was dropping me off. I was standing in this big, beautiful, clean lobby, just feeling lost and broken. I had been with Ty for almost 7 months, and this was the first time he left me, so I was kinda hurt over that. I knew he had been seeing someone else in our recent month breakup, and he wasn't afraid to show it. It smelled like lime, with spotless white walls. I walked up to the desk, and I was asked if I was homeless. Yes, I said, and she didn't even ask any questions. She just looked at me with sad eyes and said, "Okay, hun, let's get you set up." She took me to a small room full of boxes as she handed me one. She explained it was for my personal things, toiletries, etc. I looked at her with unsettling eyes and replied that I didn't have any belongings, that I had lost everything the night before. The nice lady gave me some toiletries and a pair of leggings. Next was the intake, where I had to answer a bunch of questions and was handed a paper with all the rules on it. And on the top of the paper, it stated there was no Wi-Fi in or around the building. You had to go down to the stop sign to get internet. My phone was off, but I could still use Wi-Fi. But at that time, I wasn't really that worried about it. I knew Ty was already probably staying with that other girl. Michelle was her name, so I didn't feel it was necessary to even try to use my phone. I decided to cut off everyone and try to be different. When she was done giving me the rundown on how things worked, she took me into the day room. Walking from the lobby was weird, and I remember feeling sick going through the double doors with stairs off to the left. Under the stairs was a pile of mats. I was told to grab one. I followed her through another set of double doors into the day room, which was huge. It was filled with at least 50 females, a lot of older ladies with nowhere to go, but it was loud and bright. The wall to my left was full of lockers, which I was told I would get one if I stayed there long enough. And in front of that wall was about 10 to 15 round tables set up where most of the girls were sitting playing cards, coloring, and talking. On the other side of the room was the shower and bathroom and a small TV that sat on a cart with wheels. Next to the cart was an end table that had an electrical strip full of chargers and phones. In the far back right corner was a door that led outside to go smoke. It was nice there, with picnic tables and lawn chairs set up, with a huge fenced-in yard for the kids to play in. When 7 p.m. hit, the whole dynamic of the room changed. Everyone was moving around. People were running in, and you could hear over the speaker, "Roll call." Then we were instructed to go and get one mat to sleep on. They passed out blankets and pillows to those who were without, and they let us keep the TV on. The first night was scary and lonely. Here I was in a strange place, not even 2 full days clean off a week-long crack binge. I was up half the night, with my head just racing. I finally fell asleep when the other girls started to get quiet. The morning came, way too fast, and the rule was you had to get up at 7 a.m. You didn't have to leave, but you had to get up. A lot of the older ladies didn't even leave the shelter. They knew they had a place to stay, and had nothing else to do all day, so they hung out together at the shelter all day long. I had to go upstairs for breakfast, which was okay. I'm not really a breakfast food person, but that morning I was starving. I had the whole deal, eggs, bacon, and milk. After breakfast, I went out to smoke, and I noticed this tiny black girl, with cornrows in her hair, had some cards in her back pocket. I had been playing cards since I was a kid. My dad taught me a few games. I was lonely. I didn't know where anything was, and it was obvious I needed help. I asked her her name and if she wanted to play cards, and after 2 games, we had a connection. She was cool and she liked me, so I was okay with that. I can be awkward around new people, and females tend to not like me, so I find it hard sometimes to make friends. She asked me after we played a few more games of Rummy if I wanted to go to McDonald's with her. I was cool with that because I needed to learn the area anyway. On the walk there as we were talking, something caught my eye, so I looked up, and there he was. Ty with all my belongings in his truck drives right by us. I tried to call, but he ignored me every time. Guess he was done with me for good this time. That crushed me. I wanted to fall to the ground and just sink till I disappeared, but instead, I had about 10 different emotions running through my body all at once. I was so angry that he was just looking for a reason to leave me, since a month before when we broke up and I stayed with my dad for a while, he started seeing this Michelle. I was just absolutely devastated. We continued our walk to McDonald's as I was silent and broken. That night was easier to sleep because I was exhausted from not having any sleep and just feeling done. I slept like a baby, to be honest. The next day, Mish wanted to show me this place she goes to get a good free lunch. The only thing was that it was a church and we had to sit through a 30-minute sermon, which was cool with me. We were standing outside, waiting on the church to open their doors, and this blacked out Mercedes-Benz with a trailer, hauling a badass Harley, pulled up and parked in front of the church. I then heard my loud mouth say, "Damn, that's a nice setup." I looked at Mish and then looked back at the Harley. That's when I saw him. I specifically remember everyone knowing who he was. Will is what they called him. I remember getting excited to meet new people and be a part of a new community. Everyone was really nice going into the church. The guy at the door walking in gave us a pamphlet of meal times and services offered. I followed Mish to one of the back pews and slid in behind her. The church was pretty, different colors, and there was a choir singing in a low and almost quiet tone, as there were people around us taking their seats. I kinda froze when that guy I saw came in. Will sat next to me. I looked at Mish and then I quickly noticed his gold watch. It could have been fake, but it almost looked like a Rolex. He was an older black gentleman, talked real smooth when he introduced himself with his hand out. I was shocked that he wanted to shake my hand. No one in my life does that. I shook his hand and they were soft, like he takes very good care of them, and obviously does not work a physically demanding job. He was nice dressed and had this pimp hat on, like a fedora. It even had a feather in it. His cologne was strong, but smelled good, like a man. He was handsome and smooth. He was also very confident. Sitting through the sermon, I found it hard to pay attention to the preacher. I remember looking at his clean, shiny black leather shoes, and his socks were black and thick. When the service was finally over, people started heading into the dining area. I just followed Mish through, and we got our food. She picked an empty space to eat on, at the end of the long tables full of chairs. Not even 5 minutes, not paying attention to our surroundings, just eating. Will came over and sat 3 seats away from me. He looked at Mish and said, "Do you mind?" I don't know why I didn't see the red flags. Of course I see them now, but looking back, I was so clueless. He hardly said a word the whole time we were eating, and when he was done, he got up and threw his stuff away, and I assumed he had left. Mish and I decided to go home and play some cards and go to a clothes bank she knew about. We were walking home and talking when he pulled up next to us. He rolled down his window and he asked if we needed a ride home, but he was looking at me with a deep stare. I looked back at Mish and she refused. Smart girl, but I went with him. Dumb girl. I think I was more curious than anything. I had to know how he made that kind of money, and I remember wanting that. We drove around till my curfew and just talked. I don't know what it was. I think we had a lot in common and we related a lot. He asked me how I ended up at the shelter and just asking questions, so I told him. I don't know what it was. I am not sure if I trusted him, but I told him about my past anyway. How I sold my body for drugs and how horrible it was, and I even said I was glad I didn't do it anymore. He didn't say much about it, and we agreed that we would continue our talk the next day, and he would help me put in a couple applications, and he had some errands to do. I woke up in the morning to a text from Will that said, "What if you made that kind of money, but spent it on yourself and not drugs? Everything you make will go to building your life. Just think about it." I thought about it. I'm not going to say why I agreed and went with the idea, that this would work and I could actually get my life together and get my kiddos back. $200 a half an hour. I could be free. I chose to go with him. At that time, I think he thought I wanted to be with him, but really, I just wanted a way out of that situation I was in. I hated that stinky loud shelter. I wanted out. He got a room at a motel, and we dropped off my stuff, and he told me that I needed some new clothes. He did tell me that he was just fired from a trucking company. He was a truck driver. He was currently trying to find another job as far as I knew. He took me shopping and got me a few new outfits to take pictures in to bring in the money. I knew what I was getting into, and I was preparing my mind to handle everything that was about to happen. Will did tell me that if I went with him, I had to stay clean and have a clear mind to make money and be smart. Looking back at how manipulative he was, and how he made me believe that I would do this to make my life better. I started doing this before I got addicted a few times, to make rent or bills, so I knew I could mentally do it, but I was still unsure about where this was gonna go. We get back to the hotel, and I do my thing, take my pictures and post them. It didn't take long before I started to get calls. I did make some money, and I kept every penny, and Will took me shopping. I remember the shoes I bought. They were black and gold, baby fats. Oh, I love those shoes. I got like 6 or 7 cute outfits, some makeup and hair dye. Remember, I came to the shelter with nothing, so being able to get all this stuff made me feel so good. I was confident in myself and hopeful that I could get a place and start a new life within a few weeks if days like this repeated itself. Remembering how things went, I'm starting to think that this was a part of his game. Making girls think they can do it and keep all the money and then just trap them and make them need you. It's really sick. He made me think I could finally live a clean life. Yeah, I was escorting, but I treated it like a job. I bought another phone, so I had a new number and used the Obama phone for work and turned it off at like 5 p.m. Later that day, I went back to the shelter and grabbed the one shirt I had and some personal things, and I left with Will. That night was cool. He was super chill. We talked in separate beds. We got a 2-bed, and he didn't act like he had any interest in me, which I was happy about because I didn't want to be with anyone. I needed a break from emotional attachment. After Ty left me, I felt like I wouldn't trust anyone like that in a long time, so I was happy that I was comfy in a bed, watching TV, freshly showered, with money in my pocket. I had the best night's sleep and woke up early to breakfast and for time to get myself together. He got up early too, went and got us breakfast and coffee. He ate with me and then left. He said he would be back in a couple of hours and to take my time and do what I had to do. So I did just that while he was gone. I dyed my hair and took a shower and the works. Not long after I was done and waited for him, the door opens and a female walks in. She's pale and has a beautiful face, long pretty blonde hair that ran down her shoulders. She was really petite, way too skinny, and size B chest, pretty big blue eyes that had dark circles around them. It looked like she had been crying, and she was carrying a black trash bag that contained all her possessions. Will walked in behind her and introduced her as Anna, and she needs some help too. He instructed me to get her together and get her pretty and take some pictures and post them. He then told her to go on and take a shower, and then asked to talk to me outside. We went outside the door, and I was shutting it, and his voice got real stern and said, "I see you have not made any money yet, and why the hell is that?" I tried to explain that Sundays were the slowest days, and I would be lucky to make any money today. Before I could finish, he cut me off and said, "I don't give a damn. You need to make some money. What, you think this hotel pays for itself? I will pay for it tonight, but from now on, you pay half and half of the expenses. Now go make some money." I couldn't even believe he was talking like this. I'd never seen him so mad, and his voice scared the hell out of me. I looked at him when he cut me off, and I could see him get angry. His eyes got wide, and the white just disappeared, and they became all black. I was scared, but I did what he said. He then left me alone with her while he went out and got food. When Anna got out of the shower and her skin was more exposed as she walked out of the bathroom in a small towel, I knew she was addicted to IV use. I assumed heroin. She confirmed it after I asked her if it was going to be a problem to not do drugs because that was his rule for me. Why wouldn't it be a rule for other girls? After my kid's father passed away from an overdose, I didn't like to surround myself with girls I knew I could get close to. Tried to help and something happened, so I cut all that out, and when she told me, I was like, okay, no girl, I'm sorry, you're gonna have to make some calls because you can't stay here. At that point, I didn't even care what Will has to say. I just didn't want her there, period. As soon as he came through the door, I stopped him and took him outside. I just told him I didn't think I could work with her. I didn't want to be around a heroin addict, or any kind of addict for that matter. He did make her pack her toiletries and clothes up and took her home. I think he was trying to please me for some reason. Will and I then took a ride to Main Street, where all the girls walk and work. It was so weird. Remember how I said he knew everyone at the church? He knew all those girls, business owners, police officers, and other men who drove drug dealer cars. I don't know why I didn't just run then. I'll never know. About an hour or two of driving around, talking to a bunch of different girls, this random ass girl jumps in the car. It was crazy. They had known each other for years, I guess, and she had been looking for him and wanted to make some money. She was quite a bit older than me, but still really pretty. She had long, thick, curly jet black hair. I didn't really get a look at her until we got back to the hotel. Will told me he wanted to get a few girls together and make some big money. I was always going to be number one, and I will never post with another female because I am the number one. He told me I was important and we were building our own family. Amy was tall and thick, but she was gorgeous. Big blue eyes, pretty skin, small waist with a big round butt, and she was a straight up savage. She took benzos. She was prescribed them, I guess, so he allowed it. She was popular, and then like at night, she would be falling out and nodding off. It drove me crazy. I think I even started a fight with Will about it once. I didn't think it was fair, honestly. Like, she can get high, but I can't? Just didn't seem fair. What Will would do was during the day, he would leave me at the hotel to make money, and he would take Amy to the street and work her. Will, Amy, and I didn't stay at the hotel for long. We ended up deep into the city. A bigger room and a little nicer hotel with a view of the whole city. Will and Amy brought home 2 girls that night. I don't remember them much because I wasn't involved with them much. I posted them, and then the next few days we made money. Every time a girl would make money, they would give it to Will because he had them believe he was saving it for them and getting them anything they wanted. I continued to make money on my own, and I also gave him my money. I got suspicious, and I will never forget the moment I knew I was not safe. I was outside smoking a cigarette. I wasn't out there long, but when I came back into the room, Will had all 3 girls posing on the bed as he was coaching them on how to pose and taking snaps of them. I didn't say a word and closed the door slowly. I don't know if he heard me open the door and close it, but I heard him yell my name and said he needed me. He handed me his phone and told me to post the pictures. When I got on the website and tried to post the pictures and now wanted money instead of posting ads for free, Will unhappily ran to wherever he had his wallet and put the money on his card. When I tried to put the card in it, it wouldn't accept it and said it wanted bitcoins. I informed Will and even showed him the page that it wasn't going to post. He turned and walked out of the room. I looked at everyone else and tried to apologize for his actions and to stay calm. It will be okay. He came right back in with a gun in his hand. I didn't even know he owned a gun. He hit me in the face with it and said I needed to find somewhere to post the ad and to do it, or that I was done for. I don't know if he realized he did that in front of 3 other girls, and I didn't know what "I'm done" meant either. I was terrified, and that's when I knew I had to find a way to escape. I learned real quick that I wasn't able to leave anytime I wanted to anymore. After Amy got involved, Will changed. He started talking about taking us girls to New York and make big money and travel and go here and there, and that alone scared the hell out of me. I have never been hit before. Punched by a man, but I have never been hit with a gun. That night, I had a couple dates set up, and Will knew he had to take the girls and leave. I decided to try to make a plan to get away. The first day, I made $200. I put $50 in my purse and then put $50 in a pocket and a bra, hidden away. Will came in the door not long after I was finished. My purse was sitting right there and I didn't see him do it, but he took the money out of my purse and said he had to do something and left again. That was when I made my escape. I made 100 calls before I finally reached someone who was willing to help me. I will never forget the feeling I had when I was running out to the car with a trash bag full of stuff I have collected in the past 3 weeks. I was scared to death that he would come pulling up and see me. I wanted to tell this story because I never have been able to get through telling it. I couldn't help to think where I would be if I stayed, and if I would even be alive. For years, I didn't even remember this happened. I just blocked it from my memory. I'm not exactly sure of my age when this happened, but I believe I was around 4 or 5 years old. It was morning. My mom and I went to a pharmacy a couple blocks away from our home. As soon as she was getting back in the car, a man approached her from behind and told her to act as if she knew him and to sit in the passenger seat. She noticed he had a gun, so she complied. He sat in the driver's seat and drove. During the whole way, my mom tried to calm me down, telling me he was a friend and needed a ride, while I sat in silence. He drove us to a road where he got out of the car, stole the money my mom had with her, and told her not to call the police. After that, she just drove us back home. This happened years ago when I was barely 14. My middle school, and the middle school of my best friend at the time, organized a trip abroad to Great Britain. London to be exact. It was supposed to be a few days, looking at London attractions, museums, and shops. It was fun, until it wasn't. The day before we were supposed to leave and go home, we were brought to the streets with some interesting shops, and we received free time for shopping. And then, our teachers and guide had a brilliant idea. They told us after the time for shopping ends, we had to meet at a different street than this. In retrospect, it was like 100 meters away, but still, they should not do that. Most of us never been in London. We are barely even speaking English. We don't have a map of the city, and roaming service don't work correctly. 90% of the students ended up getting lost. I got lost with my best friend because we went in the complete opposite direction. We were both confused about the directions we were given. We were walking along the pavement, and my friend was running ahead or staying behind to nervously look around. We didn't even look like we were together because we were not even interacting with each other. I guess that's why this happened. My friend ran ahead and stopped to look around when I saw a black car approach me and match my speed. I started to feel like I was in a scene from a movie. It was broad daylight, and there was a lot of people around, and no one reacted. I was confused and didn't even know what was happening. Then, from the car, stepped a man and said, "You look very nice. Why don't you come with me?" And then tried to grab me. The car was still running, so I suppose someone was still inside of it. I was stunned, and I did not believe it was real. At that moment, my friend ran to me from behind and grabbed me and dragged me away. We ran and tried to lose the car and the man that was following us. After some time, we stopped, and my friend nervously cried, shaking me and screaming why I didn't move when the man tried to grab me. I explained my deer in the headlights moment. We eventually cooled down and managed to ask some people for help, and we were finally found by our teachers. We didn't tell anyone there what had happened. We were sure no one would believe us. After that, when I got back, I told my parents, and I never went on a trip organized by my school again. My mom considered all of that really unprofessional and irresponsible on the part of the teachers and guides.